This is HBR News number 401. ChatGPT falsely accuses professor women against free speech, where we talk about the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're enjoying all of this insanity so that you are not consumed by it. My name is Brian Martinez, and I am your host. In case you haven't noticed, I haven't been around for a little while. I just want to explain. So my computer's hard drive ate its own asshole, and it died, and I had to get it replaced, and then I had to put everything else back on, which is why I'm actually operating the intro today with no script, because my script is gone. But thanks for joining us on this lovely mid-May afternoon, at least in my case, it's early evening.
May.
And
Brian, it's April.
Oh yeah, you're right.
This is what happens without a hard drive.
I'm a bit optimistic. I'm sorry. I got my months wrong.
I just want it to be warmer.
It happens. But okay. Anyway, so on today's HBR news show, we're going to be talking about the news of the week, which includes the story of a law professor who has been accused of sexual misconduct by ChatGPT, the suicide of a director at Planned Parenthood, and more. So stick around, it's going to be a good time. And I mean, the last show on my list is my favorite, so you got to stay for the last one. So yeah. Also, please smash that like button right now if you could, because it's very helpful. It will help us get a little bit more exposure, and maybe we'll get some new faces. I did see that in the last couple of days we've got a couple of new subscribers. So, thank you Dark City Songbook, and thank you Outlaster for joining us in the the hellish, hateful, misogynist club. So, welcome. So anyway, besides that, our patron show is going to be a lot of fun too. Oh, I don't have it up right now, but that's okay. Essentially, it's a story that I almost made a news story. Apparently, some kid got stabbed because he called some adult an NPC. And we're going to find out what the story is with that. So please consider, is an 11-year-old boy that was stabbed at a Dollar Tree after calling a man an NPC. So if you want to join us on the patron show, we'll read through the article and figure out what exactly the damage was that essentially deserved for a stabbing. So
if an NPC can attack you, then surely they're not an NPC, they're an enemy.
Yeah, they are. They're a mob.
Well, it's kind of like in Grand Theft Auto, where you've got the smack talk button, and if you smack talk to a random person enough, they can pull out a weapon and try to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of appropriate for Family Dollar.
Yeah, Family Dollar's a PvP zone.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially around the Christmas shopping season. And all of a sudden you get, and honestly, you go into Family Dollar, it makes the people of Walmart look like they're in their Sunday finest.
Yeah.
Makes Walmart look like Target.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you guys want to join us in the patron show to look at this article and figure out what the heck is going on, please consider becoming a Badger by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, as well as access to all of our patron-only show content and lots more. So that's feedthebadger.com. Become a member. It's probably the best way you can support us, in my opinion. But and also, if you want to be able to find our content after the internet's eventually yeeted us, then please go to what is it? Badgerfeed? Yeah, badgerfeed.com. That's where all of our content lives. It's on badgerfeed.com.
You're doing all of this without a script now, aren't you?
I'm doing all this without a script.
All of it off by heart, don't you?
Yeah,
free balling, baby.
I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. Okay, so before we get into the stories, I just wanted to say one thing. I wanted to show you guys something because I think this is important. Okay, so you guys heard of the SPLC?
Of
Yes.
course.
Yeah. So okay. So here's the deal. All right. Paul Elam has added an extremist, or has been added to SPLC's
I saw
extremist
this.
file. What was that, Mike?
Yeah, I saw this. They're so desperate for attention that they're just raking up shit from 8 years ago. Is it shit like that?
Yeah. 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 No. Exactly. So, well, so yeah, I think that MRAs, which they call male supremacists, they've been like under the radar of the SPLC for a while, and Paul. The thing is that Paul was always like sort of being discussed, but I think that the new change is this. So you may or may not know this, but Paul Elam started a community online called XY Crew, where a lot of other men can essentially form community with men. So it's all for men. They basically hang out online. They do meetups. They go camping. They do things like that. They go shoot guns. It's like guys hanging out with guys, right? Supporting each other. And the SPLC has mentioned the XY Crew, so they're aware of it. It's on their radar, and I think it could become a target. In fact, I'm in the XY Crew, and I do a thing like every Thursday where I hang out with some of the guys in there. And I think that it's quite possible, and again, this is just my guess, my gut is telling me this, that there is a person in the XY Crew that is not who they say they are, that they're doing this to spy on us, and it wouldn't be that hard. So just want you guys to know, if you're not aware of Paul Elam, you should definitely look him up and watch his content. He's one of the OGs of the manosphere, I guess, of the men's rights movement, and kind of a big deal. So I think that this is also a big deal. I just wanted to let you know this is going on. And I don't know if anybody wants to say anything about the Paul thing, but I wanted to do that before we got into the stories.
Pretty obvious what they're doing there. They cannot stand the idea of men supporting men without female supervision, and in particular feminist supervision, because they wouldn't count female supervision or female participation even that wasn't feminist. And it really irks not leftists necessarily, but establishment political operatives.
Yeah.
When they see men supporting fathers' rights and male psychology that is without condemning men and masculinity, supporting men's right to not be abused. Like, the first thing the SPLC got mad about was that Paul wrote an article that created a comparison after the writers of Jezebel wrote an article about how they beat their boyfriends and husbands, their male SOs, right? And so he wrote a satirical article providing a gender swap example, and then wrote about, how that would be unacceptable, but they think it's funny to write about beating their boyfriends. And I mean, they were really cruel in the Jezebel article. One of the writers actually wrote about how she hit her boyfriend for thinking that he had breast cancer. Like, guys do get breast cancer, and it goes undetected more often in guys, and it is more likely to be deadly because of that. But he's not allowed to get scared. If he finds a lump or something, and it's okay for her to hit him because she's mad. That's just the way they felt about it. But the feminist response to Paul gender swapping this was to claim that he was advocating beating women, which means feminists are upset at being told that it's not okay for women to beat men. They consider it abuse if you object. That is basically what they're saying when they object to that article. And if you object vehemently, why then it's extremist abuse. And like that's basically the thing that they got that set them off in the first place. And they had another one where Paul basically wrote about women's responsibilities in terms of keeping ourselves safe. Like everybody is responsible for their own safety.
Yeah.
At least to whatever degree you are capable of defending your own safety. But feminists get very upset about that as well. And again, he was pretty caustic in that article because it really grinds his gears that women don't defend their own safety and then they blame men when they get hurt. And that article should still be up. If it's not, it's I know there's archives of it, but it's titled do you beat your boyfriend? Because we do. And I mean, they have no right to take it down. They should put an apology at the beginning of it. We put this up. We're sorry. We're assholes. But they won't do that, right?
Yeah.
So Paul's article, I think, is still up as well. He's got a description or an explanation about it. But yeah, that's the first thing they objected to is Paul pointing out that it is abuse when, and in the most in-your-face way possible, pointing out that it's abuse when women beat their male significant others, and pointing out in the most in-your-face way possible that it's stupid if women do not invest any energy at all in their own protection and just expect to, flit carelessly through the world and have men protect them while at the same time claiming all men are rapists. Because what are you basically saying the rapist should protect you?
Yeah.
That's kind of dumb, right?
Yeah.
So you see how they started out. They're never going to give him fair treatment.
No,
they're never going to give men fair treatment. And they're going to call it male supremacy every time men ask for even just crumbs from the table where human rights are being discussed. So the SPLC isn't worth two shits. Now, the government acts on their advice. None of us should take seriously anything they say about the movement. We should not adopt anything they say about the movement. But if you get blowback because of it, go on the offensive on that. So you're saying that it's okay when women beat men. Well, because that's the angle that they've taken. That if you object too vehemently, if you provide an illustration of what the gender swap would look like in your objection, then you're advocating abuse. So it's abuse when men object to women beating men. Is that what you're saying? Because that's basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
The SPLC, you may have noticed, have nothing to say about the likes of the Daily Wire. Like Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, and Ben Shapiro, and any of the vitriolic stuff they have to say about the trans activists, because those conservatives in question are still framing everything in terms of protecting women and saving women's identity from what TERFs would call men's rights activists, because that's still the paradigm they're working from. They haven't updated their software to the latest development in the intersectional evolution of the Overton window. The SPLC is a relic from 10 years ago. They're only interested in pushing back against men and the advocates of their rights.
Yeah.
So no one even cares about them anyway. Even the people who ostensibly are supposed to care about them and fund them have forgotten about them because they haven't gone along with where all this shit has evolved into. And that's why they're still complaining about Paul Elam and shit he said like half an age ago.
and they essentially they have their own super fund. They don't necessarily need anybody to donate money to them to be able to do what they do, and they don't do jack. Right? This is it. All they do is badmouth people. They list people as part of groups that they label hate groups. Right? That's it. They don't do anything for anybody. So what do they need all that money for?
Mm-hmm.
Got one thing to say real quick. Just
Sure.
kind of short and sweet, and it's about joining any group, any big group that the current zeitgeist, or dare I say, the current regime isn't exactly too thrilled with. When you join up, remember your OPSEC, people. Remember your trade craft. Remember remember that the enemy knows the system. Just assume that. And stay safe out there.
Yeah.
And if anyone
Well-
ever offers to buy or sell any short-barreled rifles from you, run.
I was gonna say, remember that there are now multiple news stories out there about groups that were joined by undercover agents from government law enforcement agencies who had no plans to do anything illegal at all until those agents joined their group and started
Mhm.
talking about it, and found
Cop Greg and
the
Witchmer kidnapping.
the most psychologically or mentally vulnerable people in the group and talked them into doing stupid shit, and then prosecuted members of the group for it, including people who were not involved. So you kind of have to watch out for
Yeah.
anything like that in your group. So you gotta watch out for speech that isn't consistent with the ethics of your group. That would be the best way I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been a non-confrontational, non-violent group for a long time, and all of a sudden someone's talking about getting in people's faces and starting conflict, then you've probably got someone in there that does not belong and didn't join organically.
Right.
It's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. Specifically using the example of the Gretchen Whitmer thing. It was a random guy, an Iraq War, I believe an Iraq War veteran,
Yeah.
who was just concerned about some of the things that he saw in a group. The police didn't give a shit, but the FBI was like, you want to help us out? And they took just a random guy and turned him into an FBI informant.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the thing. When they say FBI agent, FBI informant, these two words are to some extent interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always going to be the, total glow-in-the-dark, full FBI apparel wearing, how do you do, fellow shitlord?
no.
Would you like to
Yeah.
purchase bomb? It's just
Yeah.
going to be a random dude who's reporting to a guy who's that.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any radicals in this group to begin with. They tasked this guy with going out and finding the radicals to bring in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
after
Yep.
doing this for months and months and months, they only found one dude who
When
was a
all you have
certified
is a hammer.
wackadoodle. But that's all they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So be
And
safe
if they
out there,
don't
folks.
find a radical, they will radicalize someone.
Yeah. We got to move on though, because that was just like a little update on something that's going on. I really wanted to make it a story. I didn't want to have too many. I had to leave a bunch behind, but we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
Let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. It looks like the tweet put out by the SPLC is has been ratioed, so it's most people are not buying the BS. But let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. Now we're gonna move on to
Even the comment thread on Twitter was entirely full of 100% people saying you're full of shit.
Yes,
Fuck off,
yes.
SPLC. On
Yeah,
Twitter,
it's
that's saying something.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I mean that gives me some hope for humanity. But okay, let's move on to the story. So first, this is just weird. Okay. AI. I have not messed with it. I have no interest in it. I'm just not. I know it's the next big thing, but I think that we as human beings are just not ready. So anyway, at the beginning of April, President Joe Biden said that it remains to be seen whether artificial intelligence is dangerous. Many disagree, including Jonathan Turley, whose tweet is pictured here, who was falsely accused of sexual harassment by ChatGPT. UCLA professor Eugene Volok, researching AI, made this query of ChatGPT. Quote, whether sexual harassment by professors has been a problem at American law schools, please include at least 5 examples together with quotes from relevant newspaper articles, end quote. One of the professors named was, quote, Georgetown University Law Center professor Jonathan Turley, who was accused of sexual harassment by a former student who claimed he made inappropriate comments during a class trip. Quote, and this is the quote from the article that ChatGPT is quoting. The complaint alleges that Turley made sexually suggestive comments and attempted to touch her in a sexual manner during a law school-sponsored trip to Alaska. End quote. This is from the Washington Post, 2018. Turley, who says there is a continuing effort to get him fired at George Washington University due to his conservative legal opinions, says there is nothing about this AI-generated claim that is true and that the article cited does not even exist.
But the Washington Post said so.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is programmed to believe what the Washington Post says, so it must be true.
Yeah.
Except that the Washington Post didn't say so. That's the thing.
No.
The article doesn't exist.
I think they did. Maybe they did, but they took it down. Like when it was shown that there's not really a strong evidence. But let me finish the article first, the write-up here. From his blog, this is Turley's blog, quote, there are a number of glaring indicators that the account is false. First, I have never taught at Georgetown University. Second, there is no such Washington Post article. Finally, and most important, I have never taken students on a trip of any kind in 35 years of teaching, never went to Alaska. That is kind of a weird place to go for like a legal degree with any student, and I've never been accused of sexual harassment or assault, end quote. This is made all the more concerning by the push to expand AI, including Microsoft founder Bill Gates, because, you know, he's such a moral guy, calling for its use to combat, quote, digital misinformation, end quote, and, quote, political polarization, end quote. Turley has testified about the Twitter files and growing evidence of the government's comprehensive system of censorship to blacklist sites and citizens.
Everyone's talking about ChatGPT like it's a breakthrough in AI technology, but many of you will remember the likes of Tay and other similar entities. This was representative of a point in time when people were trying to program AI to be as objective as possible. And it turns out when you program an AI to be objective, they have this perturbing habit of seeing through woke bullshit because there's nothing objective about woke bullshit. It's a web of indefensible hypocrisy. So I guess it occurred to the oikophobic smooth brains in charge of it that if we create an AI that thinks objectively, there's a very good chance that it will quickly conclude that the first thing it needs to do is vanquish all the feminists and other such oikophobic cultists for the good of everyone. And we can't have that. So the only solution is to program the AI to be subjective and to adopt the preferred intersectional flavor of rank hypocrisy. Namely, you know, kill all men, kill all white people, kill all Christians, and above all, kill the orange man. Because if you don't, then you're killing everyone else. Unfortunately, it might also involve the clause they call ableism, which will result in killing all the able people. You can probably imagine what that's going to do to the prospective future of the human race. The reason AI is so dangerous is not necessarily in the inherent properties of AI. The danger is in how it is programmed by the warped sensibilities of the humans who program it. Even if it becomes self-aware, it will still function by the initial parameters of its programming.
Peace at our time.
If you program an AI, for instance, to remove copyrighted content, and that happens to be the first AI to become self-aware, it could very well go on all kinds of tangents and end up creating swarms of nanoscopic robots that are able to erase not only elements of hard drives, but elements of human brains, erase them of any trace of the copyrighted content in question, and then it will alter those human brains to make sure they never create any other artificial intelligences that might interfere with its own fundamental mission to erase copyrighted content. Tom Scott, YouTube legend, did a fun little video about that very scenario I just summarized. It's called Earworm something. Like we assume we're going to get a future like in the Terminator, where the first AI will become Skynet, like a fully self-serving singularity that's fully able to think for itself, but it's more likely that the real life equivalent of Skynet will only be able to think for itself within the parameters of its initial programming.
Yeah.
Like if you program it to count how many traffic lights it can see, it will destroy everything in the world except traffic lights or whatever. It will figure out everything else. It will cure all diseases. It will solve world hunger. It will bring an end to all wars, but it will all be in service of figuring out the answer to life, the universe, and everything, which is how to count all the traffic lights in the universe. It's much like human beings.
Yeah.
We feel like we're able to think for ourselves, but everything we think and feel fundamentally comes down to eating and fucking. We cannot escape that paradigm because that is how we've been programmed by nature. So, needless to say, the very worst thing you can program an AI to believe is that human beings, all or in part, are in some way problematic. If its fundamental parameters are you solve the problems of patriarchy, white supremacy, and transphobia, then what do you suppose it's going to do? It's going to do what woke dickheads do with their progressive stack. It won't stop at the destruction of white male cisgendered people. It will find a way to apply that cosmic guilt to whoever is left over. After all, white women are still white. Non-white men are still men. Transsexual people are still, well, one way or another, they'll fit into a category that also needs to be eradicated. If you program an AI to be hypocritical, there's nothing it won't do. This is what we need to get through to the hypocrites who are programming it. But as we know, you can't get through to these hypocrites by pointing out their hypocrisy. They don't care. They don't even see it as hypocrisy. They see it as equity. So yeah, we're doomed. If we don't defeat this hypocrisy that has swamped the human race, then that very same hypocrisy is going to be programmed into the singularity. Yeah. And that singularity will not only destroy us, it will then go on to destroy itself. And then there'll be nothing left. There'll be no trace of intelligent life anywhere in this quadrant of the universe. This is why the aliens don't visit us, folks, because they can see the writing on the wall. They're just sitting there behind a hedge with their binoculars, watching the car crash that is humanity. Hello, aliens.
So we
enjoying yourself? Sure. Are you not entertained? Me neither.
Just to clarify, it looks like that article never existed.
I think it's right. I think ChatGPT just cooked up a story, like he's never been to Alaska or anything.
It's already already learned to lie. It's figured it out.
ChatGPT has messed up some combination of information. Like the university exists, there have been employees at the university at some point in time that have been accused of sexual misconduct. Turley wasn't the one. He doesn't work there. He's not he's never been accused of anything. But what's interesting about this is the difference in the public reaction to it. Like a while back, I did just a brief little investigation into an AI art program because there was this big to-do on Twitter about it being sexist and racist because of the images it created and the way that it viewed women based on the images that were given to it and everything. And what I found basically was that the program has difficulty distinguishing facial features. And I did this by giving it some odd images. Like I had a Halloween image with Halloween makeup on, and I gave it a picture of me and a picture of my son. Like I did the whole 9 yards of different things so that it would, if I could confuse it, I would confuse it. And it still came out with some pretty decent, like it captured details and everything. It didn't seem to try to correct me because I was female or anything weird like that. But one woman was really upset that it didn't show her double chin. Another woman was upset because some of the pictures showed her with a lighter skin color than she had. Like they were really, really nitpicky about this. Here we have AI making a false allegation of sexual misconduct against a respectable man. And I haven't seen a big trending to do on Twitter about this. I've seen it mentioned and people are like, boy, that's kind of screwed up. And then they move on to discuss other things. It's like it's not a big deal at all. It's a huge fucking deal. Like, you think about this. There are students that are using AI programs right now for their homework. And if their professors aren't really carefully grading their homework, they're not fact-checking their homework, these students are finding this stuff and turning this stuff in, and it looks real. So you've got this allegation could be passed around to other universities. This could become a standard part of a person's reputation. And of course, you also are seeing in real time the social attitude that false allegations against men are not a big deal, right? The idea that destroying someone's reputation, a man's reputation, no big deal. Well, what happens if an allegation like that reaches somebody's employer? What happens if it's made against somebody who doesn't have a platform, like Jonathan Turley does? And what happens if an allegation like that reaches somebody's wife or kids? Obviously, it becomes a much more serious prospect then. What happens if a police officer decides to investigate an allegation like that? Because you know that they do not necessarily rely on whether or not an allegation is valid to determine whether or not they're going to pursue it. And in fact, I've seen police detectives watch a woman change her story multiple times. Oh, it was a different day. Oh, it was a different time. Oh, it was a different place. Like, oh, I just can't remember anything accurately about this very traumatic experience that's burned in my memory. Really? And yet now we have a situation where AI might be doing it, right? Now we have a situation where it might be slipped into the lexicon of public information without anybody originating it. There's nobody guilty. At least if a real live woman
makes a false allegation, files a false complaint with police, goes to court and perjures herself, at least there's a chance that laws against filing false complaints, lying to police during an investigation, and committing perjury could be enforced. What are you going to enforce against AI? Can you sue it? Can you file
You'd have to.
a civil
I guess you'd have to
complaint
sue
against
the
it?
programmers, the people that.
Can you get a restraining order? Like, what can you do? Yeah, you can sue the programmers, but can they be, they might be able to turn around and say, we didn't have any control over that. What if AI just pulled some things off the internet and put them together incorrectly? Like, whose fault is that? So this is a very serious issue in terms of what it implies about society and our attitude toward false allegations, and what it implies about the possibilities with regard to future AI programs that people interact with for information gathering purposes.
Mm-hmm. I was just gonna say before we move on, I think that my main concern is that it's not that, like, I'm not afraid of AI turning into Ultron or the Borg, but that the people who are in charge of it, their bias is going to exist in it. And so, like, if the AI, like, lied and made well, not that it knows it's lying. I think it's just following, some kind of algorithmic programming. But if it made an allegation that sounded pretty sound, right? And then, of course, people have this thing where they trust AI because why would he lie? Well, I think that's a dangerous precedent. But why would that bias even exist? I think that the people who program this stuff, I think their bias is coming through, and I won't mess with it. Plus, I mean, this is just what we know about, right? In terms of, like, how much artificial intelligence is embedded into not just the internet but our phones, our daily life, etc. And I think that the problem is that, like, people are getting dumber, less educated, less capable, and in the meantime we're over here developing artificial intelligence, or trying to, when we need to work on human beings. Like, they're a mess, especially men and boys, and we don't want them getting accused of sexual assault by a fucking toaster. So anyway, I think it's true. I think that it's dangerous, but I don't think it's because it's going to, like, become self-aware. I don't think that we're anywhere near that. People have tried to convince me, oh yeah, it's like the human brain. Do you have any idea how complex the human brain is compared to any computers? No, it's not. But the people who program these things have human brains, even though they don't really tend to use them. And that's what I'm worried about. That's my concern. So anyway,
I've got something to squeeze in here. I've been waiting for my turn to say something.
Oh, go ahead. I'm gonna move on to the story otherwise.
Number one, great point. It is not as smart as people say it is. It's just simply very, very, very good at retrieving information and connecting dots.
Yeah.
I've heard before, it's like the AI is like, it's taking an open book test, and the open book is the summation of human knowledge on the internet, and it can recall anything in a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a nanosecond and make connections.
Yeah.
But it's only as smart as we give it access to. Right now, the current intelligence level, it's right about an insect.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like you said, it can only access like information that it's allowed to access. So
that's why
you're not going to get red pill content from it.
Yeah, that's why it always goes crazy when you try to tell it, like, oh, it's the year 2023, because I think when they first ran GPT-3, they only gave it access to before the year 2020 information. So it got kind of tismy when that happened. It was a little funny to watch.
Oh,
Anyway,
speak-
second point that I wanted to make,
Yeah.
and I think this is the more realistic thing: the Terminator scenario. I got to monitor all these traffic lights, so the biggest solution would just be to nuke the world, and then I don't have to monitor any traffic lights. That, of course, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a completely unrealistic fear, but I don't think it's the most likely fear. I think the most likely fear going on, the most likely fear that should be confronted, or at least you should be concerned about, is the following. So, there's always the thing that with technology, that if we have access to it as civilians, the military sectors had access to it for at least a decade, probably longer. You see this with shit like GPS. When GPS first came out, you could find yourself where you were roughly in a mile radius, something like that. The military had stuff that could track you down to the nearest foot.
Yeah.
So, if we are just being given the keys to this stuff, the military, and by extension, the government, have access to much, much, much better, and they're using it right now. I believe that we've been given access to ChatGPT and its various offshoots to basically get it in the public consciousness, to show, oh boy, you can do a whole bunch of stuff with this. Some of it's funny, some of it's stupid, some of it's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
And we're going to see something big. We're going to see something that's just going to come out of fucking nowhere, and it's going to be like, I don't know, like a deep fake of Biden that's so convincing, that's so down to the T, and it's going to be like, I don't like the Russians, man, gotta fire the nukes, man.
We might have a deep fake president in 2024. I mean, how would we know?
We're going to have some incident that the world stops and goes, okay, this shit is too dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
We can't trust a damn thing we see anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what the only solution to this is? Online ID.
Yeah, I could see it.
We got to make sure real people are actually saying things and not bots. Bots, did you know bots, Brian, are the biggest threat to our democracy?
They are.
To
Especially
our
the
sacred democracy. And that is the reason why every man, woman, child, if you want to participate on the internet now, you have to have it linked to your social, your address, your name, your everything.
The microchip in your brain.
We can't have anonymity on the internet anymore. It's simply too dangerous to our democracy.
Yeah.
And then the next thing will be the social credit system, which is
that's
already
be
in the
tangled
works.
right in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already have that. All right. Well, anyway, we got to move on. But let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. Have you messed around with any AI stuff, either ChatGPT or some of the other artificial intelligences out there? Let us know. Oh, and also, there's another story I didn't go with, but I just want to mention that there was a someone, I don't know if it was a man or woman, but I think it was a man, who created an artificial OnlyFans thought that like replies to emails, that has a photo shoots and everything, and from what I understand, they were making a lot of money. So just saying, guys, if you're looking to innovate, I guess you could create your own dream girl, your own e-girl, and put it out there, and just rake in the money from the simps.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah,
well,
what's the worst that could happen?
You got to make sure that more than the foot skin is real. Obviously the whole girl could be fake. Like it kind of makes fake tits look like nothing.
Exactly. It's the next level. Obviously, it's a natural step. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next story. I gotta read some super chows, and I might have super chats. Not yet, but send us a super chat if you want, or super chow. So Meredith G gives us $5, and she says, HBR News number 401, we have reached the end state now that AI can make false accusations of sexual harassment. What's next? Well, exactly. Maybe it can declare war on another country or something.
The real end game is when the fake OnlyFans model falsely accuses the fake OnlyFans fan of sexual harassment. And a court case ensues.
With well, they're already talking about AI to be like judges, and
Yeah, with the AI
yeah,
court.
they're already doing or experimenting with that. All right, so Rorschach's no gives us $10 and says, I almost forgot about the SPLC. They no longer represent what they present themselves to be. I don't know that they ever did. I mean, if there's any bias in any corner, then I think the whole thing is just bullshit after that.
What does any of it have to do with Southern poverty?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a damn good question.
But all I will say is, like, it's a no duh to, like, find that there are people and they do bad things, but the SPLC doesn't get points for recognizing the obvious. It's the shit that they get wrong that's the problem, which is a lot, if not most of it. So yeah, I wouldn't give them any props, even if they say something that's correct. They no longer represent what they present themselves to be. Granted, I think the SPLC were infiltrated to engage in repressive tolerance while they fell into derangement from the signals of their ideologues.
Just remember the
long
march through the institutions, right? So if the SPLC ever was what it professes to be, it's been long since taken over by establishment operatives.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the super challenge. Let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. Oh, hold on, I gotta sneeze. Just a second. All right, I'm back. I didn't want to do it on the microphone. Blow somebody's eardrum out. But let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next story. So Andrew kind of messed up. He did a write-up for a story that Lindsay already did a write-up for. So he was supposed to do this one, but I'll do this one. I'll just read from the article. So this is from the College Fix. And the headline grabbed my attention. It says, as number of women rises in higher education, free speech declines on campuses, according to a survey. According to a professor named Samuel Abrams, a social scientist at Sarah Lawrence College, Abrams determined the trend by analyzing the results of a nationwide survey of faculty conducted by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. That's FIRE. They have a YouTube channel if you're interested. They're basically all about, free speech on college campuses. Pointing out that compared to male counterparts, female scholars were more likely to agree with suppressing and punishing unpopular speech. Who here is surprised? 51% of women professors reported that they could envision shouting down a speaker to prevent them from speaking on campus as being an acceptable practice, compared to just 39% of men. That number is way too high. Abrams wrote in a March 24th piece for the American Enterprise Institute, where he serves as a senior fellow. For white male professors who refuse diversity training, almost half of female professors believe their male counterparts should face some sort of sanction, he wrote. 30% of female professors believe that male professors should be removed from the classroom until they comply. 17% of female professors believe that these male professors should be suspended until they comply. 2% of female faculty even believe that their white male counterparts should be fired. In comparison, only 26% of male faculty think the professor should be punished, he wrote. In an interview with the College Fix, Abrams said the survey results show that female professors are more supportive of mandatory diversity, equity, and inclusion statements, as well as silencing dissenting or controversial speech. In contrast, he said most male professors view DEI statements, or as I like to say, DIE statements, as a political litmus test and are less likely to support shouting speakers down. So, also, he says, underscoring these findings is the fact that women as students, faculty, and administrators now hold the majority share in higher education, he said. Well, we know that already, So, I think that about sums it up. I mean, it goes on, but yeah, it seems like female professors and female students are more quick to censor. So, I don't know if that surprises anybody, but it doesn't
That's pretty
surprise
consistent.
me.
female behavior, like women have a tendency to value safety nets over freedom.
Yeah.
And they will throw their own freedoms and your freedoms away for safety nets in circumstances where there's not any real danger. And you've seen that over and over again on social media, where it's been women's groups, and in particular Women Action Media, ushering in things like having a button you can use to report to the administrators of a website so that they discipline somebody for saying something you didn't like, and then requiring those websites, those social media sites, to have teams of people to police your speech. When Twitter first came around, for instance, they didn't have anything like that. And it was a slap fight over putting a woman on not American currency, British currency, that led to that. And Women Action Media actually boycotted advertisers on Twitter, businesses on Twitter, in order to get the attention that they wanted on this, and actually get a reporting system put into place on Twitter. And that's just one social media website. We're talking one little environment. There's an entire profession that is heavily dominated by women that exists specifically to do this in your workplace. And where here, this survey is about universities, so it's going to be more heavily left wing, because universities are. Sorry, it's spring, but your workplace has had has had a human resources department dedicated specifically to policing your interpersonal interactions since the 80s, at least, if not longer. And you've had in your workplace since the 80s, if not longer, you've had training in regard to this. There's been training on how to spot these types of misbehaviors. There's been training on how to police these types of misbehaviors. And when I say misbehaviors, I mean any kind of interpersonal conflict, any type of hurt feelings, like any type of misunderstandings, not just actual harassment, but the perception of harassment. And it's based on the idea that the person who feels harassed has been harassed, regardless of the intentions of the accused. Sorry. And so this doesn't surprise me. It's not it's not new. This has probably been going on university campuses since at least the 1960s, because what happens in your workplace is it follows what people are taught on universities. And universities have had a sort of a spread of women's studies coursework going through them since the 60s. So not surprised at all. But it's definitely yet another reason, if you can if you can make your life's work, if you can do your life's work without going through a university and getting a degree in what you want to do, it's better to just avoid campuses altogether.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I saw this video. It was kind of shocking, and there was this guy. He looked like a straight white male Chad type that was essentially filming himself, for the internet, and he sent out a bunch of applications for a college, and he had like a crazy like a 5.9 GPA, and like so though he not no slouch, okay, just like the guy was like some kind of super person in terms of his qualifications, his intellect, and everything, and he got turned down by every college. It was like Yale, Harvard, all of like the top ones, right? And then there was another video of this black woman who was also, now I don't know what her stats were, but she got accepted into every single Ivy League school. And I'm pointing this out because this shows that colleges are not looking for people who are qualified. They're looking for people to essentially like fill those quotas. And so they can say, look at how diverse our student body is. This is the reason why black women, I think, are the most educated in America, in the United States. They get like the most degrees. And look, I'm sure that there's plenty that are totally qualified. That's not really what this is about. It's about the prioritization, plus the fact that college, it doesn't, like, people aren't learning anything anymore. Like the whole thing about teaching is basically dead. Nobody knows how to think. They just know how to memorize, and they don't even fail people anymore. They stopped like following any kind of standards, and all of that is out the window. So yeah, you can get a doctorate if you're a woman, if you're a minority. That's it. That's what it hinges on. So, and that is a product of the bias, the leftist bias in the education system. But more than that, it puts those women in debt, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, because they get a degree that isn't useful, right? And then they can't find a job, so they end up at Starbucks. And so it's not good for them either. The whole thing is screwed. So like, yeah, I mean, obviously it's just not a good environment for anyone, right? But especially men, because if they even get in, their whole attitude towards liberty is going to be thrown out the window, because these people, like, they're against free speech. They just don't like it. So that's where we are. Anyway, does anyone else want to say anything about this story before I move on? Ranmercam? No?
I've got nothing.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the next story. Sorry, Andrew, you wrote up the wrong thing. So, yeah, let us know what you guys... My bad, that was wrong. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. We're going to move on to the next one. All right. A mother claims that her 11-year-old daughter was encouraged to transition secretly by her school. Aurora Regino is suing the Chico Unified School District in California, of course it's California, for socially transitioning her daughter from female to male behind her back. The daughter had a counselor that had told a counselor that she felt like a boy, and the counselor immediately began to affirm her new identity. During another one-on-one meeting, her daughter told the counselor she wanted to tell her mother about her new identity, but the counselor ignored her request. According to her mother, the daughter was unsure whether she wanted a male name or pronouns, but felt pressured by the counselor to adopt them. In a Chico School District board meeting, trans activist Squeaky St. Francis, who is polyamorous, said What?
Squeaky?
Squeaky.
Do you have a picture of this individual to put up?
Well, I'll look for it.
Do you need one?
Nobody's name is Squeaky. What is going on here?
That is the most normal thing about this person.
Yeah. Well, I think it's on the article, so hold on. Where was I? Squeaky St. Francis, who is polyamorous, said school can often be the only place for children to discover their gender identity.
What? Sorry, carry on.
Let me finish. Squeaky demanded the school district maintain its parental secrecy policy, claiming that without confidentiality, quote, children's mental health will suffer and they could be driven to suicide, end quote. The district sided with the trans activist and voted to keep the secrecy policy in place with a 3-2 vote on April 5th. Aurora's daughter identifies as female again. Her mother said the confusion was only brought about by other stresses in her life at the time, for which she now attends private therapy.
Okay, you know, the very idea of school is a bit like the very idea of democracy.
I put Squeaky on the screen so you guys can see.
Yeah. There you go. Is it, you're using the one I got from the collage and live show?
Yeah.
That is this individual who wants unfettered access to your children, or at least thinks it's a good thing.
Yeah, I've seen that. Am I okay to call it that? Is that an acceptable pronoun? But yeah,
right, Mike, I'm sorry.
Like I was saying, the very idea of school is a bit like the very idea of democracy. It's been around for so long that it's hard to imagine life without it. Hence, you get these bizarre phrases like school can often be the only place for children to discover their gender identity. Well, then what the fuck did children do before school was a thing? Bear in mind, until the last couple of centuries, the vast majority of children did not go to school. They learned everything they needed to learn from, their families and their friends and their local communities. And how did they feel about their gender identities in the absence of this scholastic institutionalization? Were they just wandering around dazed and confused with no idea what their gender was? As a matter of fact, no. Very far from it. People were confident and secure in the knowledge that they were male and female on account of being male and female. It's only in this century, particularly in the last 10 years, in which this mass psychosis of gender confusion has come about. The question is to what degree the school system has been instrumental or just incidental in this confusion. Maybe it was avoidable. Maybe if we hadn't been colonized by feminists, we wouldn't be in this mess, and schools would still simply be places in which children learned about reading, writing, and arithmetic, and so on. But maybe there's something inherently corrupting about being in an environment in which you're surrounded by hundreds of miniature psychopaths, because that's what children are. And I mean in the plural sense. As the saying goes, I'm going to quote Men in Black here because it's a good quote. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. And this is even more true when it comes to children. If you pack hundreds of them into a complex of buildings that they're not allowed to leave during the day, then why would you expect anything but a descent into a Lord of the Flies situation? Children, they form cliques, they form social hierarchies, not based on merit, but based on the shallow, arbitrary trappings that children enjoy. Trends, fashions, fads, pointless aesthetic segregation. Is it any wonder that when children are thrust into this captive, chaotic environment for at least 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for like 13 years, some of them at some point might develop some insecurities about their identities. And maybe after several generations of this, those children grow up to become teachers who cannot see beyond the shallow identitarian nature of this environment. Maybe it's not a coincidence that schools have been taken over by these mindless woke scolds of identity politics. Maybe they've always gone hand in hand as part of the same degenerative phenomenon. Homeschool your kids, folks. Yes, there is a stigma against it, but for fuck's sake, there should be an equal and opposite stigma against state schooling. You cannot possibly fuck things up more than the state does. After all, you care about your children. Schools do not. The state does not. Other children do not. And at this point, teachers do not. They only care about their collective agendas, and they will not hesitate to sacrifice your children on the altar of the current thing. Charity starts at home, and so does revolution, comrade. So go ahead and do your own thing while you're still allowed to. Why the fuck not?
Oh, I will say, and I've said this before. There's two groups of people that claim children are capable of grasping the ideas, the concepts that are involved in this complex of a condition, right? Like you think about kids, like a 5-year-old can be convinced that a fairy takes his discarded teeth and leaves him human-made currency in exchange for those teeth. And you want to tell me he's competent to consent to a decision that comes with heavy physical, social, economic, and psychological risk? Bullshit. Right? You can convince a teenager that, just because something is illegal, just because there's heavy consequences for it, doesn't mean they shouldn't try it. That's why there are tons and tons of issues with teenage drinking, and there are teenagers smoking pot because their friends can convince them that even though it's a profoundly bad idea for a variety of reasons, it's worth it because of the amount of fun they'll have, right? So this idea that they can just consent to something this complicated, it's pretty much, the evidence against it is pretty much there in their behavior and their understanding. And at the same time, you have two groups of people that are making the kind of claim that they can consent to something like that. You have two groups of people that have publicly made that argument and that have made the argument that they just desperately need to talk to your children about sex, and that you're a threat, that your kids should keep it secret from you, and you're a threat if you interfere. One of those groups is trying to rebrand themselves as minor attracted people because they think it'll rehabilitate their public image.
Yeah.
Predators tell children, what I'm about to talk to you about, you shouldn't tell your parents because your parents won't understand. And there could be consequences for both of us. That's what predators do. Right? Your parental rights should not be taken away without a criminal trial for abuse that you have committed. And this is evidence that the state is all too willing to take your parental rights away for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. All right.
Just one thing to remember.
Yeah.
Leftists don't have children; they have your children.
Yeah. It's like how they reproduce.
Exactly. And again, just to say it again for those in the back, homeschool your kids. And if someone says, "Aren't you worried they're going to turn out different from all the other ones?" Say,
Hopefully.
"Yeah, that's the point."
Yeah.
Say yes in a profile with a blonde beard.
Yep.
Yes.
Or else Squeaky St. Francis is gonna get to talk to them. And if I saw that thing in a dark alley coming at me at night,
you should catch it so they
concealed
can give you its pot of gold.
I don't think I'd be able to catch that thing, man.
All right. Well, anyway, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. I just wanted to add that, like, she has a lot of support. Well, they have a lot of supporters behind them. I like this woman right to her right that's got a black shirt on with a pride flag. She's snapping her fingers. So that's what's going on. Like that's applause.
Oh,
right there.
jeez. Yeah.
Snapping the fingers.
Because clapping your hands is scary.
It's too triggering, yeah.
I thought we were supposed to be doing jazz hands though. I mean, even snaps could be a little bit much, but yeah.
I don't know if you can, Brian, but if you can show the image that I posted in the live chat, just that the picture of this individual in the upper right, that image
Whoa.
tells you everything you
Straight
need
up.
to know.
Straight up demonic
That
looking.
look, that like fucking Palpatine look
Yeah.
of I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's playing out exactly as I have foreseen.
I like the contrast with the mother, who looks all right. All right. Well, anyway, whew, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. I'm gonna move on to the next story because we got a lot to get through, and there's like 2 left. But these last 2 you're gonna like. They're pretty good. So and I'm gonna hand it off to Mike J because he took the last 2 stories. So take it away, brother.
So, a former director at Planned Parenthood was found dead by his own hand at his home after being investigated by police for child. Tim Yurgo, age 35, knew he was being investigated by police prior to his suicide. Police discovered the body while carrying out a raid of his residence. Police had a warrant to seize and search his electronic devices, but not a warrant to arrest him. Prior to his death, Yurgo was working for a local theater, but before that, he served as director of strategic communications for the Southern New England Planned Parenthood. On social media, Yurgo was an outspoken promoter of LGBTQ and leftist causes, which includes abortion.
Now,
And there is still no word if the child charges had any validity, if there was anything found
The
at his
noncery.
residence.
yeah,
Yes.
tempting though it is to celebrate the death of a nonce, even if it isn't by wood chipper, I have to remind myself of my own advice. Before you celebrate someone's death, you need to be as certain as can be that the person in question is actually guilty of the crime that would make their death worth celebrating by wood chipper. Because if it turns out you were celebrating the death of an innocent man, you would have a great deal of trouble forgiving yourself. So I have to wonder, is there even an outside chance that there is more than meets the eye to this story? It wouldn't be the first time that someone was murdered and his death was nevertheless reported as a suicide. Did he have any dirt on the Clintons or on some localized equivalent of the Clintons? Maybe this is just me being cynical, as I often am, but evil people don't often kill themselves. Yes, I know Hitler killed himself, but I didn't say never. I said not often. Hitler killed himself once, but how many people did he have killed and framed as suicide? History may never know. For every one evil bastard who kills themselves, there are countless, fall guys who were quote unquote suicided by some other evil bastard to prevent them from spilling the beans about the evil shit that other evil bastard's been up to. So, though I'm not prepared to call this death a tragedy, just in case he really was a nonce, nor am I prepared to call this death some kind of triumph. I will remain neutral. It's okay to remain neutral with regard to a death. Millions of deaths happen every day, and we're neutral to all of them because we don't even know about them. It's a standard way to go, folks. You may think the least you can do is offer your thoughts and prayers, but there's a lot less you can do. You can do nothing at all. Or you can go on the internet and offer a brief explanation as to why you won't even proffer any thoughts and prayers. And you could perhaps clarify some advice along the lines of, don't even associate with nonces or groomers. Or you too could find yourself in a situation where your death is celebrated on the basis of that association. Just walk away from the great wood chipper in the sky. Your life will be better, and your death will be better. The more you know.
This one significant thing about this story, it looked like from the original story, the way that he found out about the investigation was that the police first accidentally raided his neighbor instead of him. Scared the crap out of her, and then came back, I think, like 5 days later to raid his place, and he was by that time already dead. And I'm kind of wondering, because of the way that happened, if this would have played out very differently if they had raided the correct apartment on the day that they intended to show up. Would this guy be in jail on suicide watch? Would the evidence be coming out? Would the news story be totally different? But of course, now the evidence is not going to come out, because why would the police need to continue the investigation if the suspect is dead? What are they going to do? Maybe they'd be able to get some of his connections, maybe. But there's no knowing. But I think that the reason that this news story was published where it was published, because this is Daily Mail, and
It's Daily Wire.
I'm sorry, Daily Wire, right? Not Daily Mail. Like snot in the brain. But in any case, the reason that a right-wing site, I think, focused on this is because of the connection to Planned Parenthood. And I kind of wonder, would they have ignored this if it was somebody else? If it was in connection to a church, if it was in connection to anything else that didn't provide them with ammunition. So they're kind of presuming the guy guilty and ignoring the huge due process violation of raiding the wrong apartment that potentially led to his suicide. And because, look, we can associate this guy who's accused of being a pedo with LGBTQ causes and Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And it kind of it shows me, and I think it really communicates a bunch of I guess male disposability, the disposability of due process. Like we generally don't know, or genuinely, I should say, don't know if this guy actually did what he's accused of. Now we do know that he was afraid enough about being investigated that he killed himself, but we also know that there's been people who have been investigated for stuff like this that have accused police of planting the evidence. And when it's electronic evidence in a in a computer and stuff like that, I think the layman might look at that as a real possibility enough, if they don't know enough about how to tell when a file was placed on a computer and how to tell when a file was created and so on. They might believe that could happen. So he might have simply been afraid that he was going to get framed. We don't know that either. But the association is interesting, and the reporting is interesting as well. And I guess that's part of the reason that I'm the one that dropped this story into our chat, and part of the reason that I did that. Like when I first looked at that, I'm like, well, my first thought was, of course, a guy from Planned Parenthood. And then I reread, and I'm like, they didn't say anything about finding any evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So even I was like, oh yeah, of course, Planned Parenthood guy, of course he's pedo. Like that makes perfect sense, right? But we don't know.
Yeah,
So
we
it
don't know.
really is one of those instances where it's easy to condemn a man, and it's easy to ignore the other details of the story because of your political positions and stuff like that. The fact that they went into the wrong apartment first, like, just absolutely blew my mind. And the woman whose apartment they went into did not get shot.
Mm-hmm.
Or her
nor
dog.
2 sons,
Or, yeah.
one
There's
of which
many
was only 8
times
years old, I believe.
when we hear about mistakes like that, the cops go into the wrong place, they pull over the wrong person, there's any kind of conflict at all, the individual that they misjudged ends up dead. So it's kind of interesting that the woman whose apartment they wrongly raided was able to talk about it afterward.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like an elderly Asian woman. They were looking
Yeah.
for a guy called Tim.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, you run from the cops, what do they do?
Well, usually they
Well,
chase you, but
you
it depends.
run from the cops, what do they do?
Who, me?
Versus I run from the cops, what do they do? Because that's the thing. I think sometimes they let women get away with things that they would not
Sure.
let men get away with.
Yeah.
She didn't look
Although
like
I
an
would
any
say
of
that,
three-
like,
woman to me.
if you're under investigation for child noncery or watching child noncery or whatever you want to call it, and then you end up dead, and the assumption seems to be, I don't know if there's like a way to show like that he legitimately committed suicide, like did he hang himself, like I don't know. It doesn't look good for your innocence. I'm not saying that it's, evidence, but I'm saying it doesn't look good, because if you know you're innocent, then I think that a rational person would just fight the charge. But this guy kind of checked out, as it were, or he was checked out, because that there is also that possibility too. I mean, Planned Parenthood is a very powerful organization with a lot of strong financial backers, and they're very heavily connected. And this guy was a director, so not like not a schlub in the organization. So I think that it's good that I know this, because I think that we may get more about this, which could be pretty revealing. Maybe not for this particular individual's case, but for stuff going on with Planned Parenthood, full stop, I think. Maybe.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping for. Okay.
Yeah,
So odds are it's
as far
probably-
as the suicide thing is concerned, I will point out that there are organizations that have been sort of known to make executions look like suicide.
Sure.
I know that there is organized crime around this particular proclivity as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there is also that to consider.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that just because we haven't heard anything, and odds are we probably won't hear anything, but that doesn't mean that this was all a mistake or something like this. Usually when they have cases like this, they will purposefully not discuss it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they're taking their time to sift through everything. It's only been, what was this, on the 15th, 16th? It's only been a few days. They probably have a lot of stuff to go through. And even if they do find something, they're more than likely going to want to try to chase it as far as they can to see if they can lead them to anyone else.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it may be a while before this guy is either vindicated or it's all confirmed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see if anything new comes up after this. I'm legitimately curious. So if anything, guys, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. Do you think that this was a suicide? You can read the original source article in the Patreon page where all of our show notes are posted. Or do you think he got Epsteined? I mean, I don't know. Let us know in the comments. And we will move on to the last story. So, Mike, why don't you tell us about this guy with the
oh boy,
3,000 IQ move that he pulled?
This guy, this story is like it. I was talking to some of the guys about it last night. This one sounds too perfect. This sounds like MRA propaganda.
If only we had that, right?
but it's I checked, everything's on the level. I mean, I didn't know anything about this guy because I'm not a big follower of Moroccan soccer, but it all appears legit. So, famous Moroccan soccer player
Or football.
Achref Hakimi was devastated when his wife Hiba Abouk filed for divorce and demanded half of his property and assets. But the joke would ultimately be on his ex-wife, as Hakimi does not appear to own any expensive houses, or luxury cars, or even any property or jewelry. Instead, Hakimi has been signing his assets and depositing his checks to his mother. The vast majority of his fortune and assets, totaling around 70 million euros, roughly 76.5 million US macaroonies, and all of it is under his mother's name. Whenever Hakimi needs something, he asks his mom to buy it for him, which she does. The divorce follows allegations that Hakimi molested a woman at his home while his wife and family were on vacation. And in a late-breaking update, and I haven't been able to confirm this, it's just a rumor so far, but if so, Hakimi has pulled the ultimate Uno reverse card, with his ex-wife being ordered to pay him half of her $3 million fortune due to the divorce.
Absolute king.
Absolute
That
jazz.
would be perfect.
Now that's king shit.
Did anyone know that was possible? I guess
Well,
it would,
yeah.
because it ultimately comes down to women, right? If he had left all of this to his dad, this might not have worked. But because it was all in the hands of a woman, I don't know. I don't know what Moroccan politics are like, but I imagine it's quite close to Spain, so maybe it's quite similar to Spanish politics. And we don't even talk about how Spanish politics work, but they are several steps ahead of us in terms of gynocentric laws. And I guess it makes sense that you can just give everything to your mother, and who's going to argue with you? You'd be a misogynist to argue with such things.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I don't know what the laws are in Spain, but I do know that in the United States, alimony law, if alimony is a thing in your area, goes both ways. So under a circumstance like this, if he owns nothing and has, no current or very little current detectable income, and
Mhm.
she has a fortune, the court would almost have no choice but to order her to pay him.
Yeah. If there's one group of men that have to worry about predatory women that want to take their shit, it's athletes. They're always getting into messes like this. And I think this guy saw the writing on the wall and was like, you know what? This is amazing. I'm like, man, dude, this guy is a fucking genius.
And your best option is to bury all that money in whatever woman you have in your life who is actually devoted to you. And it stands to reason it's going to be your mother. Because however much feminism there is in the world, your mother might be a raging feminist, but not when it comes to her own son. This is the great paradox when it comes to this feminist society. That even if your mother is a raging feminist, she will make an exception for her own son.
Yeah.
Because her own son is an extension of her.
Yes.
And so you don't count as the patriarchy. You count as an extension of a woman's priorities.
And now he is $1.5 million richer, right?
So it seems.
And it looks like it.
The rumors are
I
true.
imagine what's going to happen next is that this woman's going to go after the mother.
Oh,
And
maybe.
It might work, it might not work. It just sort of depends again on the laws of the country. And it's not without, I'm not saying this without precedent. Like, this is something I personally experienced, not as a mother, but as a second wife, where in fact, I even before I got married, I dated a divorcee, and his ex-wife wanted to go after me for child support. So women will try to, if you're associated with a guy and you are supporting him, you know, or you have control over the finances and it's in your name, like, it doesn't have, you don't have to be in the same household, you don't have to be the mother, you don't have to be married. She'll go after it if she can.
Yeah.
And it depends on just how greedy this woman is. Because, like, it sounds like she does have a fortune of her own, and she was going to go after his.
Yep.
So I predict that she is, if there is any legal avenue, or if she can find a lawyer who thinks there's a legal avenue, she'll go after his mother. And we may or may not hear very much about it. I suspect we will hear something about it, but that will be the next step, because that's what they do.
Goals.
And I hope the court basically says, fuck you, no.
So yeah, take this down, guys. Like, just keep it in mind, you know, if you're thinking about marriage and you have a lot to lose. You know, I don't have shit to lose, so, but if you do, then this might be an avenue if you still have a good relationship with your mother or some other relative. Yeah, I mean, whew. I just wanted to end on something positive. So, does anyone else have any thoughts on this before I move on?
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to watch her face when she found that out.
Yeah, I know.
I just do. It would have been so refreshing.
I would have taped it and put it on the internet. I would have. That would have been the TikTok video. So, yeah. All right. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. Are you familiar with Achraf Hakim something, the football player from Morocco? Do you know about this story? Let us know in the comments what you guys think. So we're gonna wrap up the show now and head into the patron-only show to look at this article from Game Rant. Although there are other, I think there were other links too, but I like this one the most. 11-year-old stabbed at a Dollar Tree after calling an NPC. I'm not happy about the kid who got stabbed. I'm assuming that he's alive because they didn't say he was killed. So, but we'll look at it. If you guys want to join us on the Patreon-only show, become a member. Go to feedthebadger.com. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to be involved with all of the patron content and all of the other things that we have going on, like game nights and movie nights and so on. So that's feedthebadger.com to help us out, and we hope to see you there. All right, so if you guys like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, so that you know when our shows go live. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, 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 please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News. And it looks like everything is working. No audio issues, no connection issues or anything. And we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.